What's going on, everybody? This is Gnome from the Hiffle Gnomes Music Hut. You are listening to the Bleach Bros podcast, and this is the Bleach Bros top 50 movies of all time. In this episode, the guys will rank their top films from 10 to 1. Now let's introduce your hosts, B-Word and Jake the Hater.
Welcome back to the Bleach Brothers podcast. This is B-Word, and as usual, I'm here with my buddy Jake. Jake, we actually literally, as we record this, just finished our November episode of the Top 50 Countdown. And what I like about the Top 50 Countdown is we are super prepared going into it. At least I am, because I don't change my fucking list, unlike,
I do.
other people in here. However, what's been your experience with this? I know that we've kind of called each other out on a few things. We've joked around about each other's lists. What's your experience with this? What are your takeaways?
That I get mad at myself. That I should have just wrote it out and then emailed it to you, and then you sent me back my list. Or you know what I mean? Like I wrote it and I would have snail mailed it to you, and then you sent me back like that night, like on the rundown, like here's your list. So I couldn't change it because I do that a lot. I do that with everything. Because, dude, and I'm also mad at myself because there's so many good movies that aren't on here. And I'm, like, kicking myself back going, and I mean, I can't ruin it because I don't want people to expect me maybe to say this or not, especially if they've been really following along. But, like, what the fuck, man? What the fuck's wrong with me sometimes? I mean, I'm proud of my list. I'm happy with my list. It is a Jake list through and through. But there are some films that I'm missing. I feel like you've hit the mark with a lot of them. But the other thing I find, I love that you never remembers actors' names most of the time. You have a harder time with that. And I know Ben is sitting in his chair when he's listening to our show so fucking pissed off at that. Yeah. And it does make me laugh because I do know that you Google a lot more during it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it is funny to me because it's just that's not your main speed. What have you found? I mean, and the only other thing, and I've talked about before, and then I'll ask you the question, is that I've found myself segmenting things, and I've talked about it multiple times, but that's the way I wrote out my list. Like when you wrote yours out, the first question I'll ask you is like, how did you do it? Like, did you write like just 50 all the way up, or did you like skip around, or how'd you go about it?
No, we talked about this when we first started it out, and really I kind of knew what my top 10 or 15 films were. And then I knew that there were films that I thought that needed to be on the top 50. So when I was figuring out the top films total, I then started almost like a puzzle, just throwing pieces in, right? And I came up with about 70 movies total. And that's where it was difficult, was trying to sort out the 20 films that weren't going to make the list. And like you said, there's been a couple times here that I haven't put a movie on my list that I wish would have been on my list, and probably going back and re-listening to all 5 of these countdown episodes. I think I'm just going to love the greatest part of my list, but there's going to be those 1 or 2 films that I just kick myself for. But I think for me, just behind the scenes, this top 50 list has been amazing because it's something that we walk into every single month and we know exactly what we're going to do and we just throw it out there. And the biggest benefit to me is our fans. We have had some people that have reached out to us each month telling us that they actually look forward to this episode. They want to hear what we're talking about with movies. These are all subjective, which is funny because it's basically just your opinion and my opinion. And we're just 2 average Joes talking movies. But for some reason, man, people seem to like it. And I appreciate that.
I was going to ask you this, and I don't think it'll spoil anything, but we typically on our shows, whenever we do countdowns or anything like everlasting segments or whatever, we do honorable mentions. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to throw this idea out to you and see if you could do, and we could do 3 or 5 or whatever, but I had some that I'm thinking of now that I've left off my list, and I could use them as honorable mentions. I mean, are you comfortable doing that, or do you just want to skip over it?
I can probably just throw some in off the top of my head and
okay.
Work from there. I don't know that necessarily I can say these are numbers 51 through 55, but I can okay. throw some in off the list. Why don't you go first? Give me what movie you left off the list that you wish would have been on there.
Number 1 for me is Empire Strike Back. Didn't have it at all. It's my favorite Star Wars movie. I kicked myself for that. Another one, and I'll just go down mine real quick, but the next one was Lord of the Rings. And my favorite one is The Two Towers. I didn't have any Lord of the Rings or Hobbit films on there. And it's one of those, I like them. I also didn't put it on my list because when I realized I never put Empire, I could not put Star Wars or I could not put Lord of the Rings above Star Wars. It's one of those things. It's like that Clerks 2 argument. Like there's only one trilogy. Another one that was a film that I absolutely adore, but it just couldn't fit anywhere just because I don't know if it was too serious. I've only watched it a few times, but it's The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. I absolutely love that fucking movie. It makes me cry. It's a very intense film. Have you ever seen it?
No.
It's about the Holocaust, and it's essentially like a girl on the German side becomes friends with a boy who's in the Holocaust camp and like just going through and like the heartfeltness. Another one is a movie that I just think is absolutely, it's my favorite foreign film ever. And it's Pan's Labyrinth. I like that film. I love Guillermo del Toro. I think his directing style is impeccable. And it was one of those movies, like when you see the preview, I was like, oh, it's going to be like horror and this. And then it was more serious than I thought, but I came to appreciate it. Those would be the ones I would say that I was amazed didn't make my list, more just for fanboyness. And then also just for films that I absolutely watch a lot, but they just didn't fit. What about you?
One of my favorite movies of all time. We talked about this, Point Break. It couldn't crack into my top 50. It just couldn't crack in there. There's so many movies that are much better than that. But in the same vein with Keanu Reeves, John Wick. I didn't have John Wick on my list. The very first John Wick I thought was tremendous. I thought that was really, really well done. The next movie that I would honorable mention here is a movie that was my grandmother's favorite movie, and I remember watching it with her. And so it has a lot of sentimental meaning for me, and that's Steel Magnolias. Steel Magnolias with Sally Field and Dolly Parton. That movie means a lot to me just because of the sentimental value of being able to watch that. So I'm on there with that one. Another one that's kind of in that same vein, but not in that same vein, has some sentimental meaning as well. Pitch Perfect. Pitch Perfect is a film that I would watch with my daughter, and we both enjoy the film. And I thought it was great. I thought it was a really fun film to watch. I just don't think it's top 50. I loved the movie Grease with John Travolta. That was a movie that I watched over and over and over again as a kid. And I love the fan theories that she's actually dying, that Sandra Dee is actually dying in the very beginning when she falls into the water. And like the entire movie is her death vision that she's getting. And so when they fly off in the car at the end, like that's her actually dying. I love that about that. But that's where that is. And then I think my final one would be Castaway. And the reason why Castaway is on would be on there is obviously it's a great film. To me, it's not top 50. This one would probably be 51 or 52. Great film. Absolute great film.
See, I'd love to rank musicals with you one day. So I thought of that. And like when you said Pitch Perfect, I was thinking Pitch Black, one of my favorite sci-fi films that didn't make it. But I mean, it's one of those things like you don't have regrets, but you sort of do, but you think about them afterwards. But then you're like, if it didn't hit my brain.
Right.
And I think going through this, as we've said, when you're doing top 10 is your biggest argument, which is what we're doing tonight. But when you're doing like 41 through 50, you're sometimes throwing out like amazing films because it's also that argument too, when you're talking to people like, I can't put Empire at 50. I know it didn't make my top 50, but it's also like, why am I going to do that? Also, since I am a cheater, Tombstone could have been an honorable mention, but I decided to add it last episode. So fuck you, B-word, I win. But let's dive into the top 10 films of all time for Jake and B-word. I want you to start. What is your number 10?
So my number 10 is a film with Kevin Costner, and I'm going to ask you to guess the film.
It's what's the fucking Field of Dreams?
No.
What?
Field of Dreams is a great film. That was actually my number 40, if you were paying attention. My number 10 is Dances with Wolves.
I'm surprised, but I mean, I think it's his best movie. So I agree with you there. I do think it's his best movie ever.
I think it's his best movie ever as well. Kevin Costner's an amazing actor. He really has put both feet into the Western genre. I think that he's done some great films outside of Westerns. But Dances with Wolves, I love the storyline. I love the ability for me, Native American heritage is very important to me and my family, and I felt like that was done impeccably well within this film. So Dances with Wolves is my number 10. What about you?
I like that. It's funny. My number 10, I actually almost like said it last episode, and I had a stupid moment when I was about to say 11 with Donnie Darko. I started prefacing the conversation with, "Oh, there's 3," and I was
Brad Pitt
gonna
films.
I was gonna say Brad Pitt films, and then I realized I could not even read my list correctly, and I was almost gonna go out of order. But it's 7.
Can I just
David
tell you
Fincher.
how disappointed I am with you?
Why?
Because it's at number 9.
Oh, is it?
Oh no, it's your number 10.
It's my number 10.
I have it higher.
Well, here's the thing. I did in my brain almost put it 7 just because the stupid thing, right? Where it's like 7 is 7, but it's number 10 because I think it's one of those ones where I love Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. I think it's great. I watched it a lot.
Wait, you have 7 right now? I thought we were talking
The
about Fight
movies.
Club.
No, I'm talking about 7.
The movie 7.
Yes, the movie 7.
Oh, well, fuck
Number
off.
10.
I thought you were saying
Yeah.
Fight Club. I have
No.
Fight Club ranked higher
What the
than
fuck did
number
you say?
10. I'm so
Yeah,
confused.
you did
bro.
your 10, and I'm doing my 10, and it's 7, the movie 7 with Brad Pitt. It's my favorite David Fincher, or it's my second favorite David Fincher film. He's an amazing director, and so it's more for the director who also directed Fight Club. But it's a great film. It's dark, it's gritty, it's one of Brad Pitt's best acting. I like the film. I there's not much I can say. It's creative. It's you took the 7 deadly sins. I love how fucking confused you are right now,
Dude.
This is impeccable.
It'll make sense here in a minute, but I'm actually proud of you that Fight Club did not make your number 10, and hopefully it's higher. Hopefully,
Yeah.
But yeah, this will make sense here in a minute. Speaking of dark shit, my number 9 is my top comic book film ever. I have The Dark Knight.
I'm surprised that's not higher. Because how many times have you fucking rewatched that?
A ton, but dude, wait
There
till
you
we get
go.
into the list because
Okay.
there's some better movies on here.
Well, you're jumping quick. But I mean, yeah, like I said, I was surprised how high 7 was for me. I'm surprised how low The Dark Knight is for you. I mean, tell me why. I mean, I want to know first, why is it in your top 10? Like, and we all know the real reasons, but I want to hear reasons from you because it's one of my favorite films too. Why does it make top 10?
From the opening scene where you have criminals in Joker masks going through a bank robbery, and then you go through the bank robbery and you still don't know who the Joker is until the end. And then the way that he just creates anarchy with all of the characters, where every character thinks that they have the reason as to why that they're all going to end up with the money, and they're all going to shoot the person who's potentially going to take the money from them, all the way through him actually him being the Joker, burning pallets of cash. The interaction in the interview room that Batman and the Joker have. The way that Christian Bale portrays Batman in The Dark Knight is so far more mature than Batman Begins was, and you have a strong sense of who Batman is in this storyline. You have the relationship between Harvey Dent and Batman's love interest, I forget her name, and you have Batman wanting to protect her while also wanting to give Harvey Dent a shoe up. And as Bruce Wayne, elect this man so Bruce Wayne doesn't have to be Batman anymore, and he can actually take the love interest. You have so many levels of storytelling within this film. You have such great direction of this film pioneered by Christopher Nolan. The way that it was shot in the camera angles and the camera ratios was unique for that time frame, especially when you start talking about camera speeds. When that scene when Batman is in the Batmobile and he's going down that spinning ramp from that parking garage all the way up to the boat scene at the very end where everybody's on a ferry. It's impeccable. It is impeccable. There's not been comic book storytelling that is better without believing in the comics or going animated, as you've said before. This Batman film not only portrays the greatest Batman story on film today, but one of the best Batman portrayals that we've seen on film. Not the best, but one of the best. And I love this film because I love a great villain story. And the way that Heath Ledger portrayed the Joker, not only was it Oscar worthy, it defined his career. Think about that. Yeah, granted, he died right afterward. But how many career performances do actors have a chance to get? When we talk about Tom Cruise, we think of Top Gun, we think of Mission Impossible, we think of all these different things, right? But if I were to tell you, well, okay, Chris Hemsworth, he's Thor, right? But he's not like the greatest character ever acted. When you think of Heath Ledger, like, yeah, you can think of, 10 Things I Hate About You and that little love thing
A
that he
Knight's
was
Tale
in,
and
or A Knight's Tale or different things. He was a great actor in those. This was a career-defining performance, potentially the best villain portrayal ever on film. And I don't know that you get a better storyline with that.
I'm not going to downplay his acting, but do you think if he doesn't die, it changes
His performance? No. Box office?
Not his
potentially.
performance. I meant just like it's his defining role.
Well, I mean, that's hard to say, because what would his next role have been, or the next role have been, or the next role have been, right? Because when you think of Johnny Depp, right? I mean, you think of so many different characters. Heath Ledger had that style of acting. He had the range of being able to do that. So would he have been, some other massive character that we've had a chance to see 10 years later? Potentially, would he have been a great character in a Game of Thrones style television series? Potentially. Would he have been, the next Doctor Strange, like Benedict Cumberbatch, or other great actors who have dipped their toe into comic book films? Potentially. It's hard to say given the circumstances, but I can't discredit him for the performance, and I can't say that because of his performance it generated additional box office. I think initially you can make that argument because there was a lot of thought processes in 2010, I believe, when the movie came out. When people went to the theater, they wanted to see what Heath Ledger's final role was without knowing that it was his final role, right? We wanted to know what drove him crazy as an audience. And what we found was such a beautifully done villain character that created compassion and fear at the same time. And I think that is something that that's going to affect box office performance for, week 1 or week 2. But the fact that it generated as much as it did for as long as it did was a credit to the storyline, the acting, the direction, everything else within the film.
That's a great breakdown of all of it. I can't discredit any of it. My number 9 is actually a comic book movie too, but in a totally different realm, in a totally different light, in a totally different vein. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original with Jim Henson, 1989, is one of my favorite films of all time.
That's in your top 10. That makes me laugh.
It's in my top 10. It's in my top 10.
Funny.
It's here's the thing though. If you look at it for our especially our demographic, it is well acted.
Yep.
It is fun. Animatronics is on another level.
Yep.
It hits all the points you want. It's dark, it's gritty, it's funny, it's got humor, it's got action. It's the best iteration of those characters we're ever going to see. I don't think we'll ever come close to it again. It is it's my favorite group of characters ever in the history. From the villain to that. The soundtrack's impeccable. I mean, I can go on and on about this movie, but it was also the very first movie I ever went to the movie theaters to see.
It was also the hottest April O'Neil.
Oh no, definitely not. Definitely not the hottest
Really?
April O'Neil. No, the sequel has a hotter April O'Neil.
Are they not the same actress?
No, it's a different actress. They changed it over for number 2 because she complained too much on. Yeah, they just a side note. She complained so much on set, and also complained that it was too violent, and I find that hypocritical and stupid. Like, you're starting a movie about Ninja Turtles that fight and stuff, and be like, oh, it's too violent for kids. Like, get the fuck out of here, then shut up. Like, they're gonna fight. What do you want them to do?
It has the word ninja in it.
Well, not in Europe. They're called the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles because
That's
the
true.
word ninja's illegal. But anyways, I will digress in the sense like it is the first movie I ever went to the theaters to see, and so for me that is a very important moment of that. I remember going, I remember watching it, I remember being so hyped for it, and I was part of Turtle Mania. I think our whole generation was, and it was one of those things like it was the first movie I ever bought too. There was a lot of firsts with this. It was like I remember like it is like it busts my cherry on every level of things for me, but it also it's my favorite creature feature. You know, I mean, essentially, like if I can go back to any creature that I adore the best, it's probably the turtles. And so I love that fucking movie. But I also like it because watching it today, it doesn't feel too kid like where it's they say damn and they actually fight and there's actually like moments of like intrigue and desire and emotion, and it's like they did such a good job balancing that.
Yeah.
That's why I enjoyed it so much. Because like if you look at Secret of the Ooze, it's a fun movie, but it's very
It's more
super
campy.
campy kid. It's
Yeah.
kid. Yeah, they really. I mean, they replaced Casey Jones because they were afraid he was too dark and violent. So it's like it's an impeccable film. It made number 9. I didn't want to put it higher than that because I don't think it has. I could justify it higher in like top 5. For me, I could in the sense that everybody knows how much I love the Turtles, but I mean, there's better films out there, and I'll admit that.
The storyline was mature, and I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that now. I don't know that I understood it then. The storyline also had a great toxic and revolutionary relationship between Leo and Rav.
Yep.
And I thought that was done very, very well. Yeah, I can't argue with it didn't make my list, but it didn't make my list because it not that I don't love the movie. It's just not as nostalgic or not as, sentimental for me as it is for you, but I'm not going to judge your pick, dude. I'm not going to judge your pick at all. My number 8, you actually had this in the last episode, starring Tom Cruise, Val Kilmer, 1984. The movie's Top Gun. I love everything about Top Gun. I liked Top Gun 2. And shout out to Josh from Apple Boys. The reason why he was shouted out in the last episode and this episode is because he actually put a list of his own together. And Top Gun and Top Gun 2 made the top of his list. I don't remember if they were 1 and 2, but they were definitely in the top 5. But Top Gun was a great film. There's several things that I love about this film. I'm going to kind of piggyback off you from the last episode. Number 1, it's quotable. Number 2, the relationship between Maverick and Goose, I think, was so very important to the storyline that when Goose died, it created a storyline that has lasted almost 40 years. You're dealing with the loss of his best friend and the loss of his partner, and then you factor that in with all the testosterone and all the machismo of it all, and then you have the side quest, if you will, or the storyline of them actually being in training and trying to compete for who gets first place at Top Gun. And there's no points for second place. The second place plaque is in the ladies' room. Yeah. So I love everything about it. Top Gun number 8 for me. It's phenomenal. But with that, man, what's your number 8 or number 7? What are you at?
Number 8 for me is another 80s film, 1982, The Thing, which is actually a remake.
Mm-hmm.
I love that movie. It really introduced me to sci-fi. It didn't introduce me to sci-fi horror, but I have a really deep appreciation for it because John Carpenter's great. I love practical effects. I think it's one of the best practical effect movies out there. But I like the mystery of it all. Like you don't know who it is. Like it's one of those things like what's happening. Certain scenes, things are going to happen to certain people. But like even how it just ends and it's like there are 2 guys sitting there and it's like you don't know if one of them's infected or they're not or both or like whatever. And it's just I like that. I like that open ending. I like the gore. I like the violence of it. And I'm not usually a big gore guy, but it's one of those ones I can tolerate it with this film because it makes sense. It reminds me of one of my favorite H.P. Lovecraft books. Out the Mountains of Madness, where they go to Antarctica and they drill and they find this creature and like, stuff like that. And so it's a fun movie. It's great. I say fun, but it's like, pretty intense. But for me, it's great. I've liked every iteration of it. I even enjoyed the 1935 original film that it's based off of. I enjoyed the continuation in 2011, I believe, when they did it, where it was also called The Thing. Even though I hate that they did that, but it was the prequel sequel, if it were, because it's the backstory of the Russian camp where it came from. But Kurt Russell's also impeccable in it, and he doesn't. The best part is he never overacted it. The most overacting he does is when he yells at the chess machine in the beginning and pours whiskey in it to explode the computer. Because all I was thinking is, you're in Antarctica, dude. You destroyed the one toy because you're drunk and pissed off at losing a game. Like, what if everybody else wanted to play? But
do you think that
it's well done?
Do you think that if Kurt Russell would have had the same reaction right after that as he did in Tombstone, he was like, "No," that would have been better?
No, I hate that scene. That is the worst. That's why this is Kurt Russell's, like, well, it's his best film. It's his best film because of that scene. For that one scene, I hate that scene so much. We've talked about it, where it's so fucking lame. It's so lame. He doesn't do anything like that in there. Like, I would rather have the scene where he's pouring the whiskey into the chess machine computer, because it's actually okay. It's quick. It's to the point. Not no. Like, it's almost as bad. All right. What's the worst no in a film? The top two, that and when Darth Vader became Darth Vader in fucking Revenge of the Sith.
They're the same thing. They're the same thing.
They both suck. They both.
I love them both. Well, I love Tombstones a little bit better because Kurt Russell with his no. I just thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic.
Horrible. What's your number 8 on that fucking stupid?
My number 8 was Top Gun. My number 7, which is why it created so much confusion for me.
7 of 7
is not 7. It's Fight Club.
Fight Club, okay.
Which is why I was like, "Oh, I'm so disappointed in you."
I don't understand how you thought, though, I was starting the list at 7, B-word.
Dude, because you said Brad Pitt, and I just went, "Oh my God, Fight Club." And then I assume you have Fight Club on your list. Don't get into that just yet. But when you said 7, and I'm like, I have number 7, and it's Fight Club. And I'm like, I have my Fight Club at number 7, but you're saying number 10, and I got all fucking turned around with that. So anyway, my number 7 is Fight Club. Dude, 1999, what a fantastic fucking film, bro. Oh my God. Edward Norton, Brad Pitt, Helena Bonham Carter.
Ellen Bonham Carter.
Sure. Jared Leto. Oh man. I can't talk enough about this film. Meatloaf was in it. Yes. What a great film, dude. Like this, when you want to talk about a character study, when your main character has no name, yet you fall in love with the character and you get to know everything about the character and the way that moves forward, the way that he communicates with Brad Pitt, the way that their characters meld over the course of it, the way that he ends up splicing a dick in the film. I love everything about this film. Fight Club is one of my top films of all time, obviously. But this is one that I can watch over and over and over. And if it's ever on television and I turn on the television, I will watch it right then too. It's tremendous. I love Fight Club. My number 7 is Fight Club.
That's a great pick. It's a great movie, great book, great everything about it, great acting. You've said it all. It's not there on my list, but it's there. I'll preface that. I mean, we all know it because we've sort of alluded to it. But my number 7, you've already mentioned in the last episode, and is Castaway.
I mentioned it at the top of this episode, bruh.
Sorry, top of
honorable
this one,
mentions.
So your 7 and my 7, we're all fucked up. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you're right. You said it wasn't even on your list, so we're all fucked. But no, number
Castaway.
7 for me is Castaway. Wilson. I love that movie. Oh, dude, I cried. I cried during the Wilson scene.
Dude, I cried like a little girl.
my favorite little scene is the Kelly time. I don't know why I say that all the time in my car, like when I look at clocks. I love everything about this film. I love how I've told you on the show, my dream is to be abandoned on an island like that. But then in reality, I want a ticket to get out. I want to be like the show Survivor, man. Just let me go fast and live on fish and try to survive for a little bit, but then pick me up, please. Like summer camp. But right. It's my favorite movie to fall asleep to. It's quiet enough, but it makes top 10 because he's acting with himself.
Yeah.
And he does such a phenomenal job portraying every scene acting by himself. And it's just him in a volleyball. I mean, I know there's other characters and there's other parts of the movie and stuff, but like how it's so realistic too. Like he comes back, she's remarried, but they still want to be together, but they can't. The open ending, like what the hell happened? What was those fucking fire wings and shit like that? Like how that box got him through. Like how resourceful he was. It's well written. It's well acted. It's insane how he lost all the weight for it too. It's just a great movie, and there's not a lot I can fault it for, because like I said, out of Tom Hanks, it's my favorite movie, and I can watch it over and over again, and I throw it on all the time. My wife laughs. She goes, "Oh, we're going to bed. Castaway is probably going on," because that's what happens in our house. And I'm not saying I fall asleep to it because I'm bored. It's an easy movie because it's quiet. There are so many fucking quiet scenes. And I can't get enough of the movie. I love it. I think it's a good role. I don't think anybody else would have played that role better.
No, I didn't realize that was in your top 10. That's impressive. I like that. I can't shit on this pick at all. It was on my honorable mentions at the beginning of this episode, but for this storyline to have us literally care about a decrepit volleyball. Think about that. Like, you wrote a scene about a volleyball being traveled away by waves in the ocean, and people like you and I are legitimately crying over a decrepit volleyball. Dude, it's just, what a great film. Good on you, dude. Good on you. Let's go ahead and skip me real quick. What's your number 6?
The Departed, my favorite Scorsese
okay.
film. I love the opening sequence of it. I think it's well narrated. It's awesome. It's one of those movies where it feels long. You know it's long. But I can't get enough of it. I went to the theaters to watch it, and it's my favorite Scorsese film because I feel like I relate more to the genre or the timeline of it. Like Goodfellas, I love. It's a great movie, but I don't relate much to it. I don't relate to the culture. I don't relate to the timeline or anything. But The Departed, I could see, and I'm not saying I'd be one of these characters, but I could see myself in it came out and I was at the age of all that shit happening. Like, you know what I mean? It's like it's like perfect, but it's also it makes sense to me because it's done. I don't think there's any outs, and what I mean by that is, it's done with all the espionage, intrigue, stuff like that, but also the fact of like, I don't find a lot of loopholes with it.
Right.
I don't find like, oh, that could have not happened, or that's a little fake, or that's a little over the top. It's like the way it happens is the way it probably would be. There's real life consequences. You know what I mean? Like, there's no happy endings. I enjoy all that about it. And I enjoy the back and forth of good guys being bad and bad guys being good. It's not as cut and dry. Like, this guy's a fuck up case, and this guy's the good guy, and this guy's the crazy guy, and this guy's like, you know what I mean? It's pretty much just like, this guy's fucked up, but he's going to be the good guy for part of the movie. And then all of a sudden he's going to be the shithead over here. And no, that guy's the worst bad guy, but he's technically a good guy. I just love that. I love how it's all over the place. I love how many people are in it. I like that there's tiny cameos that you don't even expect, and it feels like big fucking roles.
Yeah.
It's just it's a well written. It made me have a deeper appreciation for Scorsese because, as I said, I didn't watch like Goodfellas or something. I watched Casino because I was from Vegas, and I was like, okay, whatever. It's Scarface with a casino, great. Like, it's just one of those. Like, it's a fucking phenomenal movie, and I just can't get enough of it.
I can't argue with you, man. Can't argue with you. So my number 6 is my final sequel on my list. So this one already had The Dark Knight, which was the sequel to Batman Begins. Number 6 is my final sequel on my list. It is The Godfather Part 2. Now, some people think that The Godfather Part 2 is better than The Godfather, and spoiler alert, that's not the case on my list. But what I love about it is that they took a film, The Godfather, and they created an entire new spin. This was the first, and I want to say only, and I'm going to have to fact check myself here later on, film where you had 2 Best Actor nods for the same character in this with 2 different actors. And what I mean by that is that you had Marlon Brando in The Godfather, who was nominated for his role, but then you also had Robert De Niro for the exact same character, just much younger, in The Godfather Part 2. To me, The Godfather Part 2 is one of those ones that I can understand the argument that it's better than the first one. However, the first one means so much more to me in nostalgia and also in experience that The Godfather Part 2 just lags behind slightly. So for that, that's my number 6. So any criticism on that before we go to break?
No, I've never seen it. So
I don't think that I you know what, going into this, I didn't think that you saw it, to be honest with you.
No,
it took you
I barely
so
watched
long to watch The Godfather. So
and how did I watch the sequel before there's only the only genre of movies you're allowed to watch the sequel first is horror.
Fine.
In my opinion.
Fine.
And this is not a horror, so of course since I never watched the first one, it'll probably take me another 20 years to watch the sequel.
It might.
If you say it's that good,
don't see the third one. The third one
is
was
garbage.
Third one's bad. Don't even watch it.
I'm going to watch it now because you have it so high on your list.
The Godfather Part 2 is tremendous. Okay. It's tremendous.
How long is it?
It's like 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours,
I can do that.
Something like that. But yeah.
Well, let's go to break.
Yeah, let's make a Scotia money, and we'll be right back.
What's up, everyone? It's Mitch from the Two Guys in a Dart podcast, and I am joined by Bobby, the only guy I know who thinks about chili dogs while he's hanging out at your mom's house.
You damn right. And speaking of things I like to do on Sundays, nothing beats a brand new episode of Two Guys in a Dart.
Oh, tell me more, Daddy.
We sit down, discuss life, pop culture, entertainment, and much, much more.
So join us weekly as we take to the open road with a turkey burger and some cabbage rolls, right here on the Two Guys in a Dart podcast.
Welcome back to the Bleach Bros top 10 films of all time. With that, Jake, let's continue the list, dude. What's your number 5? Because top 5 films of all time, they're massive, right?
I was going to say my top 5. There's four out of the 5 are like massive films that almost everybody on the fucking planet have seen. There's one on there that it's like, I think you're going to be like, that's a Jake film. I get it. A lot of people have seen it. I'm not downplaying it, but it's one of those like, I think that'll be the only intriguing. I think people might not like where we're at this point, but that's fine because these are ours.
Right.
But number 5 for me is The Dark Knight.
Okay.
It's my favorite comic book film of all time. You've already talked about it to nauseum to a point, but I want to talk a little bit more about it because it's the fact that I liked Batman Begins, right? I liked it, but I think if The Dark Knight never came out, Batman Begins would have been forgettable.
Yeah.
We would have moved on. We would have said, I don't think we would have said Christian Bale was the greatest, or not that I do, but people argue that he's the greatest Batman ever.
Yeah.
I don't think I've never seen people want to mimic the Joker so much.
Mm-hmm.
I think they made him.
Want to know how I got these scars?
Yeah. Fuck you. But you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those where they made it, not that the Joker wasn't already a grounded character, but they made him so grounded and so like, this is our generation's like bad guy. It was impeccable. And it took a well-known, well-developed character with all his gallery and everything and turned some of it on its head and said, I'm still going to do it my way and I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
Because like you watch Batman Begins, right? It's Batman to a T. It's the comic book. You got Ra's al Ghul, all that, right? Then you watch The Dark Knight and it's like the opening scene is the perfect example. Like we're getting the Joker. They're robbing a bank. Okay, it's going to be another Batman film. He's going to stop and save the day, and he doesn't even show up, which is amazing. You don't have the hero jump into the opening sequence. You have the bad guy get away with it. When he takes the mask off, you're like, holy fuck. I mean, in my character study, it's more of a bad guy Joker film than it is a Batman film. But and that's where I've said I've turned the corner where I think it's more important sometimes. Now we're at the point in our day and age of it's more important of the villain you cast than the hero sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's such a phenomenal film. I mean, it made us all start to have the deeper Batman debates because I don't think it was debatable at the time if anybody was better than Keaton, and that was the best Batman film we had. And because here's the thing, as I said, Batman Begins was almost forgettable without this film.
Yeah,
like it makes the whole trilogy. It's one of those weird films where you can watch the middle one, be caught up enough, but also realize you feel like you've seen them all.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You don't, but you're a huge fan of the trilogy without watching the trilogy. Like how many people go, "Oh, I love the Nolan trilogy," but it's like you're watching one fucking movie,
right?
You're not watching all three all the time.
What do you think about the theory that the Joker was actually like an Iraq war veteran who
I
had
don't
just
care.
had enough with the government and just became
Don't
completely
fuck-
anarchy? See, I think that, and the reason why I bring that up is because we had roundtable discussions at times, not only about who's the best Batman or what's the best Batman story, but how did the Joker become the Joker? And I love how
Mhm.
ambiguous it was all the way through, to where you can find storylines like that with, oh, he was a PTSD suffering Iraq war veteran who had just had enough of the government, and this is how he came back and what he was doing. And whether that was where the writers came from or not, the fact that we were having the debate on it, or storytelling, or trying to fan fiction around it, to me was incredible.
But my favorite thing, and like I said, the reason I feel it's more Joker-esque in the sense is Heath Ledger died, it became his defining role, in my opinion. But like when you hear the backstory of like when all the villains gallery in that movie, right, was sitting at the table, like and how Joker was introduced, like nobody saw him up to that point.
Right.
And when he came out to act that, and he ad-libbed a lot of that fucking scene, everybody was blown away. And the scene where he's at the party where he walks
Yeah.
in to throw
Gyllenhaal, Maggie Gyllenhaal, whatever her character was,
to throw her off the fucking balcony. It was the fact that like that was the first time they all saw him.
Yeah.
And it was like I loved that they filmed it that way to
Yeah.
where it was like people were first introduced to him like we were.
Complete authenticity.
The people in the movie felt like us in the opening scene when he took off the mask. You're like, holy shit, that's the Joker. That's
Yeah.
what we're getting. Like,
Yeah.
I even felt like, even with the trailers, I don't even remember the trailers for this movie. I just remember it's a Batman movie coming out. I'm going to go watch it. And
Yeah.
I was surprised at every turn.
You had a movie poster that was Christian Bale in the Batman suit with a bat symbol on fire up against the skyrise. And I think that the only scene that we saw potentially and I'd have to rewatch the trailers, was the Joker leaning out of the police car and letting his hair in the wind. And like, but it was so quick and so fast in those that they were just amazing. So good on you, man. For me, number 5, I'm probably going to get some criticism on here, and I don't care, because for me, number 5 is number 5 for me. It is a movie by Mel Gibson. I want to say it's one of the first ones that he actually directed. Braveheart came out in 1995. Story
Never
about
seen it.
That's fine. Story about William Wallace. At the time, this is Mel Gibson had a meteoric rise in his acting career, between comedy films and drama films and romance films and whatever. This film for me did a whole lot in the way of allowing me to experience more cultures, if you will. And I know that's probably a bad word for it, but like more historical type battles. On my list earlier was Gladiator, and I kind of felt like Braveheart inspired that to a certain level. And I'd have to look at the years to see if that would be the case. But Braveheart is a story about William Wallace. He's a true character. He's real. Or at least is real in history. It's more or less a civil war between the right for power between two different nations at the time, and there's a lot of glory and a lot of blood and a lot of sadness and sorrow and triumph. And from a character story, Mel Gibson is an incredible actor, but the fact that he was able to put this story together and deliver it in the manner that he did, Jake, I'm going to be honest with you. You watching it now, I've probably ruined it for you. I'll just be candid with you.
No, it's fine.
Because my fandom is that high of this movie. However, there's probably going to be some people that don't like Braveheart, again, because of maybe the length of the film, maybe the pace of the film. This is a 3-hour film. Back in 95, right. 3-hour films weren't popular. People didn't want to sit through, movie theaters for that long. But for me, man, Braveheart is a phenomenal film. It ends well. It ends real, which is what I appreciate. You and I like an authentic and real ending. And that's where this movie is for me, man. So Braveheart's my number 5.
See, I never watched it because as kids, we were VHS generation. It was on 2 movies.
It was, yeah.
It was a double package, a DP package.
Yep.
And so I never watched because that was long. And again, Theory of 2, because we brought that a lot, my brain. as you were saying, because it was Mel Gibson. Did he direct it, like you were saying? Or
I believe
he directed it.
Yep.
It's his. Dances with Wolves. Kevin Costner is to me what Braveheart is to you.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like
totally get
it's
that.
the first film for them. Like I see it. Like I can see the impact. I know I'm not saying they're the same film, but it's like that same style, historical references, very fucking long. Their first like sort of directorial debut. People fucking love it. They can't get enough. Everybody's told me it's a great film, and it's one of those too. It's like I've never heard like, oh, it didn't age well. Like it, like
Right.
you know what you're getting. You're watching it. You know the time frame it came out, but you're going to enjoy it. I just have never taken the time to sit down and watch it, but I think it's because it's sort of like The Godfather. It's like, if I'm going to watch it now, I know I have to spend all that time and invest
Right.
into it. And if I didn't invest it in 38 years, why am I going to now? So
Right.
I can't fault you for it because I've never seen it, and I hear great things about it. The funny thing is, too, B-word, I own it. It's upstairs in my collection, my DVD collection, and I've still never popped it in. I don't even know if the shrink wrap's on it. It might be, but I own the movie.
You know what that
never,
movie is
never
better
popped
than?
it in. What?
It's better than your mom and dad's Land Before Time film.
Everything is better. I'm glad that wasn't a DP package double film in shrink
Same.
wrap. Okay,
Same.
just gonna say. Number 4 for me. Moving on. I've talked about this movie a lot. I think it's the movie that made me love sci-fi.
Okay.
It's the movie that never dies, and sometimes I want it to, but and I don't mean that. I just mean the what's it called? The franchise. But Alien. I
figured this was going to be this high for you.
Alien. Because it's a horror movie, but it's my favorite, and I tell people that. But it's the thing I love about it is majority of the movie you go without seeing the creature, and I think that's a lost art. And you want to see it because you're like, oh, what was that face hugger thing, or what's in the egg, and then oh, okay, what's on his face, and then oh, what came out of his chest, and oh, where did it go? And seeing people break down how you probably would if this was happening to you. It's great. It's fun. And I say fun, but I mean, for me, it is. I can sit and watch this movie over and over again. And it's awesome. It's so well done. I liked that they took Geiger's drawings and made this creature. And it was like, the other thing, it's original. It's like, we always thought aliens looked like, like fucking little gray men or little green men, whatever you want to call it. It was like something out of a fucking nightmare that came to life. And you're like, holy shit, when you saw it. And I've never met a person that said that doesn't look fucking cool. Like, I would have changed this about the alien. I would have changed that. Like it's almost like the perfect specimen. Like, this makes sense for this movie. And I love that you barely saw it. And then when you finally did, you were like, don't want to be involved with that. Right. And it spawned off so much to like become more than what it was. I also like that it didn't make the creature more than it was.
Right.
It was a creature. It just has a purpose to fucking kill and just repeat, like almost like a giant space cockroach, like fucking dog. I like the film, and it was groundbreaking for what it is too. I think it really helped develop the genre coming out of the campy robot, like Space Invaders sort of thing. And it made it a legitimate contender to actually develop what the films we have now. Because, I mean, before that, you had a lot of like, oh, the man from Mars and like very 50s films. Like, yeah, you had 2001: A Space Odyssey and stuff like that. But I mean, it's one of those movies that it's groundbreaking for its time and what it did. So
it's aged
number
well.
4 for me.
That's the biggest compliment that I can give to it is it's aged well. Even still, like you watch that film today, even if you've never seen the film before, you're going to be encapsulated by the story. And I love the fact that you have a horror that high. Or at least something that you consider a horror that high. I consider that more of a sci-fi, but I actually do have a horror this high. Now, some people might call this a psychological thriller. I call it a horror because I think it falls into that genre. It is not a sequel, okay? But some people will argue that there's a movie that came out earlier in 1986, and it was called Manhunter. And that was the introduction of the character. And while they're correct, it was not the same movie franchise that put this film out. Instead, they created a franchise off of this film. This film came out in 1991. It stars Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. It is The Silence of the Lambs. The Silence of the Lambs is an incredible movie. First and foremost, you have the crime part of it, you have the aspect of it, the investigation part of it. You have characters like Buffalo Bill or Buffalo Bob, whatever his name was, that tuck their dick between their legs and fold it up, and it rubs the lotion in the skin. The way that Hannibal Lecter might be the best villain ever. I don't know that. We haven't ranked that, but he's definitely in contention. I think that Anthony Hopkins, not only did he portray Hannibal Lecter so very well in this film, but he portrayed him so well that it literally created a franchise of additional movies for Hannibal Lecter. I think you'll find that people not only feared Hannibal Lecter, but they also loved Hannibal Lecter, which is really weird to talk about off of a murderous cannibal, right? Jodie Foster, holy shit, she did a phenomenal job in her role. Mm-hmm. She was a great investigator. The relationship that she had, Clarice, with Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter, the dynamic between those two and the way that they would communicate and the way that they would, like, Hannibal Lecter would hint at things and then she would just go down, and he was like manipulating her, but she was also investigating him. And man, what a beautiful film this is. The film's perfect. The film is perfect. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where my list is getting into is as I'm getting into this list, I'm finding perfection within film. And The Silence of the Lambs is a perfect film. It is a perfect horror, if you will, or perfect psychological drama, crime drama. It's fantastic, dude. I love it.
I enjoy, like, when I watched it when I was young, you thought, like, you know, Buffalo Bill's like the bad guy, but you also know Hannibal's the bad guy. And so it's like one of those things where it's like that dichotomy that's amazing about it. No, and I agree with you. That's an impeccable film, amazing writing. I love it. I don't have the same, it's sort of like me with Alien, right? I don't have the same love for it as you do, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I totally appreciate the movie. My next one, I think you'll appreciate. I think you'll appreciate where I put it. I think you'll appreciate that because you love this film, but it's Fight Club. I think Fight Club's in my top 3 of all time. I can quote the whole movie front to back. I watched it so many fucking times. I love that it was an absolute. The studios consider it a failure. It's the first movie I felt where Hollywood had a big budget, tried to promote the fuck out of it, and it's still a big middle finger.
Yeah,
to Hollywood. Like, and it's another film. My parents hated it. I'll never forget. My parents hated American Psycho. My parents hated Pulp Fiction. And then when they watched this, they hated it. And what did I do? I went out and rented it the next week at like Hollywood Video or something because it came out in 1999. And it's one of the biggest cult classics of our generation in the sense that it didn't become really big until it came out on video. And I just think it's an impeccable film. As you said earlier, you don't even know the main character's name. I didn't even read the book till later in life, and I appreciate the book so much more now. But I like that it pushes boundaries. Like when she's talking about getting fucked in grade school, you're like, that's disgusting. But I can see it. Like, you know, just seeing how it's filmed in a way that I think movies were trying to do, but they perfected it in the sense of like it's that weird marketing ploy to our generation X of being like, you know, fuck the man, but I'm still going to do it enough and make it big budget, but also do it small enough to where it feels like a cult classic. The acting's great from everybody across the board, but I mean, I also like that the twist, right? Where you find out Tyler Durden's not even actually fucking there, and it's himself talking to himself, and he is, you know, Jack's fucking liver or whatever. It's just, it's well done. It's well written. It's well acted. I don't think it's Edward Norton's best acting role ever. I still will throw out to American History X. But it's one of Brad Pitt's. Which didn't
make your list, by the way.
Which didn't make my list, and we talked about that when you named it. How it pissed me off. It didn't even make my honorable mentions this one because I've already talked about it.
Actually, really appreciative that you didn't like manufacture your list like right after Tombstone. You put American History X.
I only did that with one movie. I did that with one movie. I didn't feel right doing it with two. So, but Fight Club makes number 3.
Before we get into my number 3, we are running a little bit longer. Let's take a real quick break, and we'll be right back. Sometimes people have a story to tell. It could be a story of triumph or a story of sorrow. However, it's their story. It's important to keep their story authentic, in their own words, and delivered in a delicate way. That's where Unfiltered Discussions podcast comes in. I'm Brian Howard. I talk with my guests about tough subjects and pivotal moments. I'd love for you to hear their stories. Subscribe to Unfiltered Discussions on your favorite podcast platform. Let's ensure their stories are heard. Welcome back to the Bleach Brothers podcast, top 10 movies of all time. It's been really fun counting down this top 50 list with you, Jake. I can't say that enough. This has honestly been one of the best ongoing rundowns that we've had, in my opinion. I know for me, one of my favorite episodes is our Super Bowl episode, but there's a lot that goes into it, and it's only one episode. Whereas this one has lasted us really almost half a year. And I appreciate that quite a bit. But before we went to the break, you said your number 3, and your number 3 was Fight Club. And my number 3 is Tom Hanks' best film, in my opinion. You do not like this film as much as me. You're probably going to eye roll me or whatever. Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is amazing.
Oh, I can't shit on
I
that.
love everything about Forrest Gump. I love the soundtrack with Forrest Gump. I love the fact that this was the first time I saw faces digitally altered into historical things, like when he's meeting JFK or, different things like that. I just thought that this was incredible, dude. Forrest Gump to me is an epic piece of storytelling. It's something that the book does not even do it justice, because the book was mightily different than the film. And the way that the film went with Robert Zemeckis and Tom Hanks and the amount of effort that they put into it. I think you watched the movies that made us with Forrest Gump, at least that episode, and just the backstory behind it, on just the soundtrack, how they had all these songs that they wanted to put into it, but the studio wasn't willing to pay all of that. And Tom Hanks and Bob Zemeckis said, you know what, take it off of ours. We'll just take, royalties or whatever. And the fact that they bet on themselves and then just completely just nailed this. It's a great film. One of my favorite films of all time, obviously top 3. That's Forrest Gump to me.
Great film. Very quotable. Big for our generation. I mean, it was, I think it was bigger than anybody expected, but it's one of those movies. It's enjoyable. Anybody can watch in a room. You're happy. It's a very, very memorable, amazing film. And I was eye rolling at first, even before you said it. And then when you said it, I was like, oh, fuck, I'm wrong. Like, I can't argue that. Number 2 was the one movie I was mentioning when we were getting into my top 5 that I don't think it would make a lot of people's 50 list at all. And it's not because it's not a good film. It's one of my favorite actors of all time who's not in a ton of films, but every role he does to the best top ability that an actor could ever do. But it's the movie There Will Be Blood. I adore this fucking movie.
Great film.
And this is the epitome of a Jake movie, as you know, B-word.
Yep.
It is
Slow
slow.
burn.
It is a long burn. It is dialogue. It is chewing scenes. It is people that sometimes might come across as overacting, but not. Daniel Day-Lewis is the fucking greatest actor of all time, in my opinion. I will stand by that forever.
I agree with you. I
think when he takes a role, he does it better. And I believe in that character, like where he doesn't even, I mean, he looks the same to a point, but it's like, he's that guy. And just, I just love the way he acts in this movie. I like that it's based on the book Oil. And it's just, they did such a stellar, phenomenal job. I mean, he becomes more unlikable the longer the movie goes, but you can't get enough of watching him. And I can throw that movie on, and I think it's one of those, it's in my top 2 because I think I appreciate it more than almost anybody, in the sense that I could watch this all the time and I could be alone and watch this and still feel fine. And I watch it over and over and over again. I love this fucking movie.
I can't argue with you. It made my top 50. I think it was number 34, if I remember correctly. Great film, dude. Great pick. I can't judge you on that. It's obviously much higher than I would have put on there, but again, this is subjective. This is the best part of it all, right? So my number 1 and number 2 are somewhat interchangeable. Like, it's really hard for me to define which one's which. My number 2, I went with Back to the Future. And the reason why I went with Back to the Future is, number 1, I think it's the most perfect film of all time. I think that everything in Back to the Future number 1 was done impeccably. from the storyline to even the time travel rules that they established and how that worked throughout the story, the character arcs, the ability for the actors to portray characters of different generations, the camaraderie and the relationship between Doc Brown and Marty McFly. Biff might be one of the greatest villains of all time, although I don't know that he's the best. Back to the Future is amazing. Number one, I think it was something that we found in our youth that translated very well into our adulthood. This is a movie that I can watch over and over and over and over again. And I fell into the propaganda where I watched Back to the Future Part 2 and Back to the Future Part 3. And I watched the cartoon that was Back to the Future for a little bit when I was a kid. And I love everything about this, from the DeLoreans. Anytime I go to an automobile museum and they have a DeLorean, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it. And the first thing that comes to my mind is Back to the Future. Back to the Future was very close to my number one, and it very well could have been my number one. But definitely my number two, 100%. I absolutely love it. Any comments on number two? On my number two?
I love Back to the Future. It's funny that Travesty, my old co-host from Vegas, good friend, that was his favorite trilogy of all time, and I loved when I would sit in like Denny's and we'd all be sitting around round tables like we do, like me and you do on this show, like where we talk with friends, and we'd be arguing Star Wars, and somebody would be arguing Lord of the Rings, and everybody would be arguing like their trilogies, right? And then Travis would just look over and go, "Back to the Future is the greatest trilogy ever." He's like, it is the best movie front to back. There's nothing wrong with it. Everything, and all three of them connect. It was made that way. It is one of those movies that I hope never gets remade.
Yes.
It's on my list of that. I would love to do a list with you on that one day of like movies that should never, ever, ever be fucking touched. Ever. It is one of them. And it is an amazing movie. And it is a great achievement. I love how well acted it is. I love the mystique behind it, in the sense I love like it's still talked about to this day, so I can totally agree with you. I am interested in what your number one is, and I know we're going to get to it because how you said it's interchangeable. I also love that you didn't pick that as the sequel over it, because I mean, growing up, our generation, everybody loved Back to the Future 2 more.
No, I was always a number one.
No, I know you are. I'm saying, though, you remember everybody loved the hoverboard scene. They loved this and they loved that. And it was like, that was the movie that everybody talked about in our age range, because also it came out after we were a little older. But good on you on that. Good on you on that for your number two.
Well, before we get into our number one, we have some friends of the show here that have something to say to you, Jake. So here we go.
Hi, this is Paul.
And this is Sophie from the SP Film Viewers podcast.
Hey, Jake. What is your number one film?
I love that little voice. Thank you guys for that little introduction. I'm going to say my top film all time, and I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to go out right now with middle fingers up, say fuck everybody, because Jaws is my number one movie of all time. And it's because it's a shark, it's a creature feature, it's well acted. You could put it on at any time of the day, anywhere I'm at, I'll watch it. My favorite scene of all time of all movies is them drunk in the boat, drinking to their legs, talking about women, talking about stories, talking about the true story of the USS Indianapolis. But just... And then finding out about like all the horror stories of that movie and how it almost never happened, and how it's another one. You don't even really see, like, you see the shark in the beginning, but it's one of those things like you're still waiting to see the actual size and what's going to happen. And I love it. I love that movie. People can argue with me all day. I mean, to this day, we're still wearing the shirts. We're still talking about it. It is compared to a lot of cinema. And the shark looks like crap nowadays, but it still holds up to me.
Yeah.
It still holds up. Those three guys on a boat, the three most different people you could ever put on a boat trying to survive and kill this shark. I just fucking love it. I can't get enough of it. I love that it's essentially based on a true story of the shark of not even the same breed. It was that story from New York, it's from New York, and it's supposed to be a bull shark, but it's just greatly done. The book is garbage, I'll tell you that right now, but the movie's phenomenal. And whenever I tell people this is my favorite movie of all time, they just laugh. Because I'll say this for the rest of my life, I've always said it's my favorite movie. I could always watch it. And I've never faltered from that either. And so I think that's the other reason is there was years ago, I was at a breakfast for work and somebody asked me and they just looked at me like, really? That's it? And it's like, yeah, it is. And I'll stand by it forever. I love Jaws so much. I cannot get enough of that. I mean, my wife laughs whenever, because it's always playing on AMC. And if we're flipping through the channels and she sees it, she just rolls her eyes and goes, all right. And she knows we're watching Jaws. She knows I'm putting it on. And it's almost always I turn it on a scene where it's like right at the perfect time where they're in the boat drunk, drinking to their legs. I love the fucking movie.
It's a great movie, dude. I am a little disappointed you didn't have Back to the Future. But that's okay, man. I totally get where you're coming from with Jaws. But we have some other friends of the show, so let's introduce them here real quick.
Hello, this is Colin from the Seismic Cinema Podcast. Hey, B-Word, what's your number one film?
Well, thanks, Colin. My number one film, dude, I think you know what it is. I think you know what it is based off of what it is. And I've also hinted with what it is because I already talked about the sequel. My favorite movie of all time, the best movie of all time on my list, is The Godfather. I love everything about The Godfather. Mob films in general is probably my favorite genre of movie. I love Donnie Brasco. I love Goodfellas. I love The Departed. I love everything about mob films. I love the way that this movie was portrayed because the mafia was involved in telling the story. The mafia was involved in basically saying that they were not mob or mafia. They were a family. They spoke in a way that was so respectful of Italians at the time. And the way that the storyline goes, there are some issues with it, in my opinion, as far as there's certain scenes that are a little rushed. There's certain scenes that take a little bit longer, but I'm okay with that because of the overall storyline. You look at the amount of actors that are in it. You look at the actors who have had success for the long term after having a chance to be in this film. It is a phenomenal film. It is one, again, like you, that I would never want to see remade, ever. Nobody should touch this film. When people get shot in the eyeball through glasses and it looks like tomato juice is coming out, I want to keep that in there. I don't want to see blood and gore in this film. I want to see the movie for what it was in the 1970s. This movie created, in my opinion, what cinema is, at least today. Maybe not tomorrow, but today, where people wanted to go to the movie theater, where people had to go to the movie theater. This movie was an event that took place that I wasn't even able to experience because I wasn't around. But I remember the first time I watched this movie, and I remember the last time I watched this movie. The Godfather Part 1 is my absolute favorite movie of all time, bar none.
I don't know how you would interchange that with Back to the Future, two totally different films, but I totally get it. It took me forever to watch the fucking thing, and when I did, I totally appreciate it. I can see it, B-Word, and it's funny. It's like, when I say creature features or sci-fi, that's up mine. Whenever I hear about mob movies, I know it's in your jam.
Mm-hmm.
And so great fucking picks. I really, really enjoyed doing this list. It was a lot of fun. I know we talked about it for years, and we always joked we would never do episodes that are 2-parters or 3-parters, or this was a 5-parter essentially, but you know what I mean? Like, we would never do ones that you had to follow. And so for all the fans that followed along with us and played along and gave us comments and been listening this whole time, thank you very much. Thank you to all the other shows for commending your voices to us to help us, for introductions and stuff. But dude, killer fucking list.
Yeah.
Killer list. I'm glad you let me change mine a little bit. I'm glad you let me break the rules like I normally do and change my Sheldon brain. But I look back at them and realize they are the epitome too of our list.
Yeah. These define our character 100%.
Yeah, we're not sitting here trying to say, Schindler's List is the greatest movie or whatever people say, Citizen Kane, right? We're not going the normal route. I mean, there are some films that, like, Godfather is considered one of the greatest films of all time, and it makes sense, but it makes sense for you too. it makes sense how it's not even on my fucking list.
I have reasons
But
for
I
why
love that.
certain films are not on here, like Shawshank Redemption or Schindler's List. And the reason is because when I was grounded in middle school, those were the two movies that I was allowed to watch. And while I like the movies, they always remind me of being grounded. And I don't like that. So there are reasons as to why certain movies don't make our list. But overall, dude, two completely individual lists. I definitely see you and yours. I know I see mine and mine. And this has just been a great time, dude. So with that, man, what do you got for us?
Thanks for all the dirty talk. Come back and get sanitized. If you're a fan of our show, be sure to check out this one to stay sanitized.
Haha, what's poppin', y'all? It's your boy Date Money, and every Monday, join us on every streaming service on the Bromigos podcast.
Come talk shit with your boy Panama Red.
And you better not forget me, head advocate of the Big Titty Committee and undercover brother, Motorboat and Matt.
And me, Hoochie Daddy Sleppy.
Yes, my new name is Hoochie Man Hunter.
Yeah! I was hoping you were going to say that.
We talk all things sports, sex, and more. Coming to you raw and uncensored. Ain't nothing off limits.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Mike.
I'm Tabby.
And we're the Grace Taproom Podcast. Be sure to check out our link tree at linktr.ee/Grace Taproom Podcast 2.
There you can find our partnership with Hollowed Sense, buy us a coffee because we definitely need it, all of our socials, listening platforms, and our merch store.
And if you love our show enough, please feel free to subscribe to our Patreon. We have 3 amazing tiers starting from $3, $5, and $10 with a bunch of great content all over the place.
Thanks for listening, guys. Don't text and drive, don't drink and drive. Always drink responsibly.
You heard her. Do it.
Taproom closed.
The world's changing, and it's not necessarily for the better. Cancel culture is out of control. People that are claiming to be woke are actually more divisive and destructive than they will ever admit to. The silent majority's getting fed up. We're tired of normalization of things that should not be acceptable. We're tired of division. We're tired of fighting. A lot of us just wanted to be left alone. A lot of people are worried that they're going to be canceled, that people are going to come for them, that the woke culture is not going to allow them to have a voice or to have an opinion. Too many people in this world have gotten used to the idea that just because they have the loudest voices, they are somehow automatically right. They're way too comfortable using the false front of inclusion or acceptance to try and push hateful, divisive agendas. Instead of focusing on things we all have in common, they want to accent and highlight and push all the differences and forgetting the fact that we're all just people. It's time to bring back common sense. It's time to start focusing on inclusion instead of exclusion. It's time to stop worrying about things that happened generations before any of us were walking the earth. It's time to start holding people responsible for their actions. It's time to have the uncomfortable conversations. It's time to learn and grow and expand. I had to say at the podcast, having the uncomfortable conversations that need to be had. Available wherever you find your podcasts or at ihadtosayitpodcast.com.
Have you ever thought about having a beer with Ted Bundy? Or been anally probed at Area 51? Perhaps go to dinner with Jeffrey Dahmer? Taking a car ride with JFK? Or enter a romantic relationship with O.J. Simpson? If so, then crack a cold one. The Pub Time Podcast just might be for you.
Download, subscribe, and listen to Whiskey Hill Podcast. We're the new show that doesn't hold back on today's ridiculousness. We're not on the right and we're not on the left. We call it the way we see it, and we're going to make you laugh while doing it. Throw in some great craft beer and you cannot lose. Download Whiskey Hell Podcast anywhere you enjoy listening and check out whiskeyhellpod.com for more.
There are two types of people in this world, those who wait for things to happen and those who make it happen.
Here at the Moose Lounge Podcast, that's who we like to have on. The ones who are sick of the 9-to-5 and want to do what they love and feel alive.
We like to find out what they do, how they did it, and what they're doing to keep it going and stay relevant.
Don't think we're just some boring, predictable interview podcast. We do so while drinking America's only native spirit, bourbon.
So sit back,
grab a glass,
and enjoy
while you listen to us interview individuals who have turned passions into careers. Available bi-weekly everywhere you get your podcast.
Booyah.